welcome to one of the biggest weeks of the year in PGA, the Players Championship. We got a killer deal available for a limited time only where you can save 33% off of your first payment to a RunPure subscription.
By using the promo code PLAYERS33, you can knock 33% off your first payment on a RunPure subscription. Our team has been crushing PGA since day one, and what better opportunity to join RunPureSports than a week where we will see some monster tournaments. Last year, BigT won the Players Championship Millie Maker, and our team has not slowed down since, with big wins from Hoop and AP, among others, making RunPure's PGA team the most elite in the industry. Our members have been on fire too, shipping 2 Millie Makers in the past year. You can find all the best DFS players in our PGA Discord channel, chatting about weekly slates, so get in there today and access all the great info.
If you haven't subscribed to our YouTube channel already, make sure you head on over now, subscribe, and turn on those notifications so you know when we go live for all of our free PGA shows. We cover main slate and Showdown, so whatever you are playing, we got you covered.
Sign up today for a premium subscription to RunPureSports and take advantage of our promo for a limited time only. Use the promo code PLAYERS33 to knock 33% off your first payment on a RunPure subscription.
Thanks again, guys, and make sure you head on over to RunPure to take advantage of that promo code, only available for a limited time, and find out why our members are crushing PGA by accessing our great premium content.
What is going on, everyone? AP over here at RunPureSports, bringing you the Sabersim RPS Office Hours show. I'm here with my guy, Jordan. Before we dive in and get started, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. Helps us out very much. We do have a promo going on right now. It is Players33. That's going to get you 33% off your first payment over here at RunPureSports. Sabersim is included in that deal. Phenomenal deal. Come check us out. It's the right time to do it. Jordan, what's going on, my man? Today we're going to be discussing, so we spent a lot of time discussing NBA relative to Sabersim, how to use the optimizer in conjunction with our tools over here at RunPureSports. Today we're going to focus on PGA. We got the Players Championship coming up this week, obviously starting tomorrow. How's it going, Jordan? How are you feeling about the event this week?
I'm good. I'm excited to be back. I was glad we could move this up a day here to talk a little bit about Sabersim and building golf lineups and why there's such an advantage in using simulations to be successful in golf. The Players always kind of feels like the unofficial start or like the heating up of the golf season for me. So super excited about the event and excited to talk about it here a little bit today. So.
Yeah, so we're gonna I'm gonna hand it back over to Jordan. We're gonna pull up screen share and we're gonna go over a bunch of different things within the tool, specifically golf related, looking at the different sims for each individual golfer, looking at things like groupings, a few new tools that were added, for all of us. And so, yeah, Jordan, I mean, I'm good with just kicking it back to you, and we can dive in and go through this and look at the different things that are going to help us out for the making lineups for the Players Championship.
Yeah, let's do it. So, what we've got here pulled up, I think the easiest way to do this is we'll kind of walk through a build and just talk about everything going on at each step of the process. But right off the bat, let's talk about step one here, reviewing the player pool and what's going on here behind the scenes. It looks at first glance, I think, a little bit familiar to what you may have seen with other tools out there, especially with the average projections. What's going on under the hood is actually a lot more robust, a lot more sophisticated than just looking at the averages.
I got a question for you on the projections, and I might interrupt you a few different times going through this because I'm still, as much as I've used it already, I'm still always learning and enhancing my own skills. With NBA, one of the things that I believe are the projections have gotten very, very good, and NBA is really a sport that is projection driven. In PGA, talk a little bit about projections and how the optimizer uses those? Like, should you be manually adjusting the projections? Like, can you hit on that point just a little bit, like what we should be using or what we should be doing to the projections on players we really like? How much should we be bumping them, or how much should we be reducing them?
Yeah, good. Yeah, absolutely. So we don't actually use the average projections a ton or almost at all when you're building lineups for golf. And that's actually a good thing. So I've got Daniel Berger's distribution graph here pulled up for the players, right? And we see that he's projected, right? His average outcome is 70.7 points. And if we look, that's actually not a very popular outcome for him. It looks like you can see there's kind of we call it a bimodal distribution here for the miscut and the make cut outcomes here. And this 70.7 outcome doesn't happen that often. It's basically, I guess, like an outcome where he makes it past the cut and then has a bad weekend or something like that. If you compare this to something like NBA, you'll see that a lot of times the player's average projection is close to their most common outcome, which is why, in a nutshell, we say that average projections are good in NBA and why they're not good in golf, or not as useful in golf. With that said, ultimately, I would say if you want to make adjustments here in step one, it's still a very good approach to boosting projections, right? Or boosting projections is still a really good approach. I always still like to use the same thing that I mentioned before in other sports, where I like to think about things as kind of a 5 to 10% boost. So if you ran a build, for example, and maybe you weren't getting enough Berger, you want a little bit more of him, the idea of boosting him up maybe 5, 10%, something like to maybe 76, right, is still a really good approach. All what we're going to do when you do that is we're just going to shift this distribution curve all the way to the right by however much you boosted his projection. But when we actually go through and build lineups, and I think this is just a really key point about what's going on here, and we can click the build lineups tab here, we're actually going to use very small buckets of tournament simulations that are sized based on the sim variance slider here. So what we will actually do, instead of going through and optimizing for an average projection that we just saw in the distributions isn't actually that very accurate, what we're going to do is we're going to pull in our tournament simulations for this tournament and make individual optimal lineups for small sets of simulations of the tournament. And every single lineup that you get when you actually go and build these lineups is optimal for a certain tournament simulation, which means that a lot of the heavy lifting of trying to make good lineups is taken care of for you. You're left with a little bit of mostly the selection process of what kind of lineups you want to take into the tournament. So I feel like I'm already getting a little excited, getting a little ahead of myself. Did that help answer your question, or anything else kind of that I can help explain a little bit more there?
Yeah, no, it did. And so,
Okay.
like, if I was a member or a new user doing this, I would, and let's just say, let's just say if you wanted to fade someone or you didn't like someone, you can just remove them.
Yep.
Let's just say you don't like them as much relative to, like, maybe our projection, like maybe Jon Rahm, who's been struggling with the short game. Maybe we don't like him as much, and maybe we want to be more towards where Sabersim's projection is at. Reduce it down to there. If you do that, I think that is going to be the right, approach. Another thing that I do in PGA 2 is I just like to, kind of leave. Like, I don't touch the projections right away. I'm more of I want to get my pool really defined first, and then I'll start making some adjustments. That's kind of how I do it.
I think that's perfect. And honestly, what we typically recommend, or what I recommend a lot of times, especially for newer users, is to go in here first before making any adjustments, to just run a test build here and see how things are kind of looking. A test build, when I say that, I mean default projections, default settings, leave everything alone. Just see how things are looking. It'll help you target your research a little bit more. Who are the guys you're getting a lot of right out of the gate? Who are the guys you're not getting a lot of out of the gate? And it'll let you figure out where the best opportunities to make some adjustments are.
Yeah, very good. Do we want to make a build and see how the baseline looks?
Let's do it. Yeah. So, I think this is a good starting point, right? We gave a little bump to Berger. He's a guy that was popping for me when I was doing a little bit of research earlier today, and we dropped Jon Rahm. I like that point about how
Berger's a guy I want to lock in. Oh, yeah, such a good play.
Yeah, well, he's going to be pretty chalky too.
And I think we have contrasting styles too. So like I like a tight player pool, and you know, I look at, when it comes to PGA, I look at the whole season, and all I need to do is get a couple wins, throughout the season. And if I do that, I'm going to be on the right path. And so I like just, maybe I'll miss on a guy, a certain week, but I like dialing in my player pool. The other kind of thought out there, and I don't think there's any right or wrong way to do it. But then the other thought is maybe more your style, and maybe I'm assuming a little bit, but the bet on variance, especially on a week like this. I think the Players Championship, if we get soft conditions and then bad weather, I mean, it could be a highly volatile week. So it's going to be really interesting kind of going through this with our contrasting styles when it comes to PGA.
Yeah, absolutely. No, and you nailed it. I like to play a little bit more, I guess, a higher variance style. I'll leave a lot of golfers in my pool. I fade chalk pretty aggressively. My general rule of thumb with golf DFS is generally most chalk is bad chalk. And that's kind of the way I go about it. But yeah, no,
I love it.
Let's get into a build here. I want to talk here at first, because it's been a little while since we've gone over it. I think sometimes I gloss over this step, especially for people that aren't as familiar with our tools. What's going on here on step 2? It's also something that's a little bit unique to us. So we've got few sliders here is what we call them. One that is missing that's on other slates would be the correlation. But for golf, we've got the ownership fade and the sim variance slider. So I mentioned sim variance before, but what essentially this is doing is this is saying, how small do you want the bucket of simulations that we're using for each lineup to be? And since golf is a very high variance sport, you generally want to get pretty close to that optimal at the end of the tournament. If you have ambitions of taking something down, this is going to be really high. We recommend leaving this pretty nice and high for most of your contests. And the ownership fade slider is basically going to be, how much do you want to value the ownership projections? How much do you want to fade the chalk? This is something that typically you're going to see it come in around moderate, somewhere in that 2 to 6 range, depending on the contest that you're playing. And on that note, basically the only thing that you really need to do as the user here on this step is tell us what contest you're building lineups for. Obviously, if you're building a single entry build for a small kind of 500-man tournament, going to be a very different approach than if you're going out there trying to win the millie, right? So you come in here, set your sliders or set your drop downs here to the contest that you're targeting to build lineups for. And at least as a baseline, we'll put the sliders where we think is an appropriate spot for you to work with. So let's go ahead. I think for now, let's just build a set of lineups and play around with this a little bit here and see where things kind of sit. You'll notice as we're going through this here, we're not just building, I know we set a 20 max, 10 to 50K entrance. We're not just building 20 lineups. We're going to build 500. And the reason we do that is really twofold. The first is so that you have the opportunity to make changes here in step 3 without having to go back to step 1 to make more adjustments. If you realize that you got way too much of a guy or way too little, you can adjust that here without having to go back to step 1. But it also lets us figure out what the best lineups are, right? If we only build 20 lineups, that's it, end of story. Those 20 are the ones you're taking with you into your contest. In this case, since we built 500, we can actually rank these by what we think the best possible lineups you can play are. And the way we do that is through SaberScore. And what SaberScore does is it's going to take into account the ownership of a golfer in the lineup, and also how many points or what outcome that golfer had in that particular set of sims used to make that lineup, and rank the lineups overall by which ones we think are the best. So building, I think a question that's come up a lot as I've been doing these office hour streams with you guys here, I always recommend keeping this pool size up. I think by default, it's 500 for most builds here. I would almost never recommend going below that. And I think there's also, if you told me that you wanted to bump this up to that 1500 range, I think that's perfectly fine too. But it's a really powerful part of the process, leaving that pool size up at the 500 or plus mark. So any questions there? Anything you wanted to add, AP, before I kind of just keep on rolling here?
Yeah, no, I like that. One thing I did want to hit on, I think we're going to a little bit later, was that step 2 part and some of the things that we add that Sabersim added in there, specifically groups and different things that we might use for PGA. I don't know if you want to go back there.
Yeah, let's do that. Let's talk about the groups real quick. So yeah, I had kind of glossed over that here. So we added this new feature, and then it was was released a little bit under the radar here, but I know this is a really commonly requested feature, something that people have been asking for a while. So this is under the rules tab. You'll see this new section called groups. And you can go in here and add a group rule, and this will basically allow the ability to create sets of golfers that you either want to force a certain number into your lineups or limit a certain number into your lineups. And one I know that I hear has been kind of popular, one that I like to use on occasion here is grouping golfers by salary, so that you don't have too many golfers below 7K in your lineups. Is that a rule that you typically kind of use, AP?
Yeah, depending on the contest, like this week, I think would be a good week to use that rule because you have so many of the top ranked golfers here in this field. I don't know how comfortable I would feel having multiple pumps or multiple punts in my lineup. So using a player group. So what we basically, so let's just say I have my my player pool defined, and I've already gotten rid of a ton of guys in the 6K range. Let's just say I'm left with like 15. Would they automatically be the people I removed from my pool? Would they still be in here? Do you know off the top of your head?
That's a good question. My gut feeling is that they probably do still show up in here. Okay. So one thing you got to look for there, but
an easy way would be just to take adding, like, using these rules can take time. It's part of the process. Go in there, check all of the 6K guys, right? That's how we do it.
Yeah, well,
I mean, so for simplicity purposes, let's just because I think that might take a little bit of time if we.
No, let me show you. Right? So you can actually do this at once. So if you pick the guy at the top, right? So Hank Lebioda is the first guy here. We can go all the way to 6.9. Get that last guy, whoever's at 6.9 here. And if we just shift click, so if I'm pressing shift on my keyboard and then clicking, it'll grab everybody in that group.
Okay.
So it saves you a ton of time. Yeah, we can add them.
Yeah, there we go. I was doing it the old school way, Jordan. I already learned something new.
There you go. Yeah, saves you a little bit of time there. Someone actually on one of our Sabersim streams taught me that, so I'm just passing it along. I was on stream the other day, clicking everybody in one by one, and someone was like, you can. Oh,
that's awesome.
Shift click it here. So yeah, and then so we've got all of these golfers in one group, right? We're basically going to say in this case, you can change the operator here and kind of create your own logic for how you want this to work. So less than or equal to, in this case, 1, you think is appropriate for this kind of event?
Yep.
Cool. A couple other things that are in here that I think are pretty useful. You can name these so you don't lose track if you end up with a lot of different groups. Maybe this is your less than one punt. Yeah.
Here, I'm kind of interested. So can we add this rule? Let's put it into effect and let's rerun the same build, because that top Saber score build had 2 6K guys in it. So I'm just curious to see how it impacts the builds.
Let's do it
on the fly here.
Yeah.
And I mean, we could see 2 6K guys, I think in that scenario, you're assuming that John Rahm wins, or Rahm wins. I can't talk today. And because, to get him and then some other good golfers into your lineup, I mean, you're going to need people from that 6K range. So let's see. Okay, so the 6K guy that now Mackenzie Hughes. We still got Rahm in there. We got Hughes, Gooch, real solid. Corey Connors, just phenomenal play. And there we go, my boy Patrick Cantlay. I like that. And in golf too, so you'll notice like 600 left on the table. I'm not like, I would be fine with that. Like it's golf. It's just so much different than a lot of the other sports out there. We don't necessarily need to use all of our salary, especially when we're multi-entering.
Yeah, absolutely. And those sports where the average projection just isn't as useful, like I mentioned before, I think same situation, doesn't really matter as much if you're getting close to that max salary. You'll see sometimes there'll be some lineups here at the top that can be, even leaving 1,000 on the table. This one leaves 800. Definitely no big deal there. So
kind of bouncing around here, but I thought of a question.
Yeah.
The first thing that you started talking about, the player kind of distributions with the Sims, is that something that you can use in your research process? Like, let's just say I'm going about it and I'm trying to define, dial down my pool. I already have done kind of the macro stuff. I looked at the course. I know I want ball strikers or whatever. Now I'm just like between a few different guys. Do you ever use that? Like click on the profile and then, so if you click on Burger right there and you see his distribution, is that something you're doing to get an idea of who you want to bump up and who you want to decrease?
Sometimes I think it's mostly especially useful if you're introducing yourself to a new sport completely. It can be really helpful to get an idea of kind of how that sport plays, to just come in here, pull the chart up and ask yourself, how good of a projection does an average projection seem? Does it actually mean anything that Berger's projected for 76 points? And you can kind of see like not really, compared to something like NBA where that's going to be their most common outcome. In terms of looking at individual players and clicking individual guys, I wouldn't say that it's a huge part of my process. I think if you wanted to do that, something that might be a little bit more useful is looking at this data we have here on step one for the make cut percentages and the win percentages here, right here on the right. I think this information is just a little bit more. This all comes from the Sims. So this is the percentage of simulations where a golfer makes the cut. ROM wins in 8.3% of our simulations, for example. I think this data can be a little bit more interesting for some research purposes, but I like looking at those distributions mostly when I'm just checking out a new sport or something.
Can you click on ROM real quick? I'm just curious to see his, because I kind of have Burgers in my like locked in. Okay, so one thing that I noticed right there, and this makes sense, just from like if you look at the the model's going to be far more confident right there on ROM. So I mean that's something that you can use in your research. I think when you're looking at it from a sim projection in that or perspective, and that's why. It's probably trying to force John Rahm, into our builds. Because realistically, when we just look at John Rahm and what he's doing right now, he's still striking the ball better than anyone else in the world. He just can't make putts and he can't chip right now, which is a problem. But if he fixes that, you're going to see right there, he's going to be, there's a high probability of him finishing with a good amount of fantasy points. Am I reading that correctly?
Yeah, no, you nailed it, right? I mean, this does look a little bit different than Burgers here we had just up a second ago.
Now, can you go to like Jordan Spieth? I'm just kind of curious here because this might be something I add into my process.
Yeah, and this is a golfer that I'm almost certain we're going to be a little bit bearish on.
Yeah, so there you go. But that's right. Like that's it's confirming using it to confirm the other things that we're using in our research process, watching them, looking at the stats, course breakdown and all of that. So I like that feature quite a bit. That's not something I've used actually. And I've been using Saber for PGA for multiple months now.
Yeah, no. And I think on these sports in particular, where you don't have a bell curve, a normal distribution, it can be pretty helpful every once in a while to come in here and take a look at a couple guys, especially, you run your build. Maybe you're getting a ton of a guy. Maybe it's ROM. Maybe you're not getting any of somebody else you expected to see pop in here a little bit. You can come look and see why. Go ahead. Can
you go to one more guy, just because I'm curious? Matt Fitzpatrick, another guy that should, I think our projection is a little too low. I think you guys are higher. So, okay. And a nice, decent, I mean, that's a decent range. Like I see upside there, more risk, but some upside.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay. Absolutely. Very cool.
Cool. Let's jump back into our build here and let's talk a little bit about some of the things that you can do after the lineups have been built. So we'll give this just a second here to pop up. So, I mean, one thing that popped up here, I know we've got just 20 lineups. We put our group in, didn't really edit our player pool. So everybody's kind of in here, but We've got Maverick showing up here 50% of the time, projected only to show up in 1% of the lineups in the field. Might be a little bit of a risky stance overall. You can do two things here if you want to just get less of him in your lineups immediately. I know AP, you're kind of partial to adjusting the projection down here a little bit, and maybe you bring him down to say 55 points. See what that does to your exposure. And it looks like there you go, drops down to 20% of your lineups. I automatically feel a little bit more comfortable about that than half of my 20 here. If you wanted to dial that in even further, maybe you want exactly 15%, you can set the maximum exposure here, and we'll get you exactly 15%. Works the other way too. So if let's see if we've got somebody that wasn't showing up at all. A guy that I think is going to go under owned this week, I don't know how much of him I'm going to get to, is Hovland, who looked great last week. Maybe you want to get a little bit of him into your lineups. We can set maybe 10%, just a tad, and we'll go in and we'll find. Go ahead.
Would you, I actually, for PGA, when I'm using Sabres Optimizer, I use the Minimax a lot more than any other sport so far. It's actually like my process with PGA. I do all my research, and then I define my pool, and then I go through player by player, and I look at my core, and I will really want to get overweight on who my core plays are. So you'll if you're a member out there, you'll see what my core is. And if you don't have to agree with me or you can't agree with me, it doesn't really matter, but those are going to be the guys I'm most overweight on. And I set parameters. Now I get pretty aggressive. So like I'll have a tighter pool and I'm really going for that win. And I understand that if I miss, I'm on to next week. And I'm fine with that. So what I'll do is usually I want my top guy to be at max 70% owns. And then I want the bottom guy in my core to be right around 40. So I set parameters of 40 and 70, which is usually a common practice for me with my core three guys. Okay. I should be doing that at step one, right? I was just kind of confirming that.
Yeah. I mean, so there's a handful of different ways to do it. I think with step 3 in golf, your pool is going to be so diverse already because it's such a high variance build that you can probably get away with doing it in step 3. That said, if you know that you're going to tackle it this way, you've done all your research, you're ready to do your final builds, and you want 40 to 70% exposure to these three guys. Yeah, I think best practice would be to do that in step 1 so that your pool can be exactly what you're looking for. We'll make sure we get you a ton of lineups with those three guys in them.
Okay, that makes sense.
And I mean, the one other thing too there, and once we have I know no cores loaded in here yet, but once the cores pop up, you can also set a rule to get the cores in there. You can set at least 3 players or however you want to do it from AP's core if you want to get those players into your lineups as well.
Yeah. Yep. I like, is there, I forget, is there a way for someone, not yet, right, for someone to create their own core? It's just our cores, correct?
No, I mean, so the way you would do that would be with a group. So we have this, so I guess that's a good opportunity to talk about. So yeah, so there's kind of different types of groups maybe you would do here. So you've got, in one case, I don't want more than one 6K guy showing up in my lineups, but maybe you've done your own research. You figured out how you want to tackle the tournament, and you've got your own core. Right? Maybe you've got 4 guys and you always want to see 3 of them in the lineup. So maybe we can build a group like that. You got a couple guys you want to throw in here into a group?
Yeah, let's throw Fitzpatrick,
okay.
Matt Fitzpatrick. Let's throw maybe Jason Kokrak.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. Let's go Berger.
Yeah.
Get a bunch of some good ball strikers, and then Fitzpatrick plays good in any environment.
Awesome. Cool. So yeah, so we have a nice core of 3 guys here now. And then let's do this. Instead of just saying we're going to lock all 3, let's just say we always want to see 2 of these guys' names in every single lineup, right? So a different style. Again, we can rename this. Maybe this is our core that we came up with here. Different style of a group. We're not limiting here. We're instead making sure a certain number of golfers show up. Let's get another build going. And in this case now, both rules are going to be honored here. So The grouping rules can be really powerful, I think, especially on the golf side of things. Is one of the main features we wanted to showcase here today, just because I think there's a lot of different ways to use this. So
after this, I want to take a step further and get a group, then a core of like that upper range type of golfers and set a similar rule just to see if if there's any errors or anything that pop up. So we're getting 100% Berger.
Yeah. And we bumped his projection up too. So that might explain a little bit of that. If we reset this here back to the default projection, he might come down a little, not so much. So yeah, I mean, it's saying 100% fine. You want 2 of these 3 guys in every lineup. We'll give you 100% Berger and then split Kokrak and Fitzpatrick 75-25. From here though, you could adjust this, right? 50% Fitzpatrick. Maybe you want to get a little bit more of him in there. Boom. And you're still going to make sure that you've always got 2 in every lineup.
Is there an easy way to see if any of those players didn't make it in? So like if, does that make sense? The question I'm asking from that core, because we're only taking in 2. Is it just searching for them basically? That's probably the best way.
So I mean, you can see all 3 names here at the top. But yeah, so we've got obviously Berger's in 100.
Yeah. Okay. Gotcha.
Fitz is in 50 and Kokrak is also in 50. I mean, one thing you can do here, you can use the filters. So if you wanted to kind of check your work and make sure that everything worked as expected here, if you use this filter and say, show me all lineups that have Matt Fitzpatrick in it, it will then update this here and it'll say, okay, every single Fitzpatrick lineup you also has Berger.
Gotcha. No, I like that. That's cool. That's really cool. Go back to the group. I want to see what this does real quick.
Yeah.
Now this is adding a lot of control into it, but let's make another core and let's use so let's put Patrick Cantlay.
Mm-hmm.
Let's do Hideki Matsuyama, and let's throw in let's see who else is up there. Let's go with how about Morikawa? Yeah, we'll do that. Now, if we set that same rule, I'm just curious to see. So 2 of the. I'm curious if this will be overload, or if it's going to throw out a really tight kind of allocation towards these guys.
Yeah, let's see. I'm interested to see as well. And I mean, while we're doing this, I think it's worth noting here that it is definitely possible to break the groups. If you go in and add like 20 groups or anything like that and have impossible lineup constructions in the groups, it's possible to get an error. But I think this is going to work fine just because the group should be pretty flexible here. So yeah, there you go.
So this would be like if I was running a 20 max and I wanted to get really aggressive, this would be something I would kind of do. Because like what I'm doing is I'm for now. You're adding some manualization to it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, it defeats the Sims concept a little bit, right? Or is it still?
Honestly, I wouldn't think about it that way so much, especially on the golf side of things. The Sims are still going to be used for your lineup. So every single lineup is still resting on a set of individual simulations. But just because of how high variance golf can be, how valuable the research process can be for this particular sport, I would say if you are interested in adding more value to the process, if you're the kind of player that doesn't really want to just build, set it and forget it, you want to do the research, you want to add groups and things like that, golf is like the ideal sport to do it on. So if you've got a tight player pool, you've got 3 or 4 different groups, you've really got your lineups exactly the way you want it, I think it's the best. This is probably the best overall sport to do that kind of thing with.
Yeah, I like that. I would say this and then NASCAR too is one that I'd play around with the groups. Yeah, no, very good. That's cool. I'm gonna be playing around with that tonight.
Yeah,
dialing in my 150.
You see here,
you can do a lot of things with that.
Absolutely, yeah. And I mean, here's you're getting all those guys that we put together in the group showing up right at the top here. Didn't take too much work to get those kinds of lineups. We've still got that rule in there protecting so we don't have multiple punts getting jammed in.
I mean, if someone's out there and if they have the time, and let's just say that, let's just say there isn't a clear edge on the morning wave or the afternoon wave, but let's just say there's a 70 to 80% chance the afternoon wave is going to be better than the morning wave. You could actually create a group and say, like, couldn't you, like, that you want X amount of more players, or you could, I'm trying to think on fly how to do it. You could, whatever the worst wave is, you could put all those guys into a group essentially, and then say only one or two max, you know, from this group if you wanted to, which is going to just naturally force in everyone else from the other side of the wave. So
you got it.
Lots of things that you can do with groups for sure.
Yeah, and I know adding tee times in here, or adding at least just like if somebody's in the morning or the afternoon wave, is something that is very commonly requested. That is on the way. That's something we're working on. For now, yeah, if you went and kind of looked up what time everybody's teeing off, you could go in here theoretically and make the group of, say, you know, this is everybody in the Thursday morning wave. I want, however you want it to do it. I want to cap maximum 2 or maximum 1 from this group, or I want at least 4. There's a couple different ways you could do the logic there, but yeah, I think that's another good idea, especially on Showdown, where that's kind of one of the bigger edges we can get.
That's such a great point. And now we're doing Showdown videos and a lot of Showdown content. And this week, I'm already excited about it because we're already coming off a nice week where we had some edge due to weather. And so there were, I forget what day it was, but I mean, I was leaving on most of my builds, 3,000 to 4,000 salary on the table. I actually made it, well, it's an easy rule to make. It's just in I think the first or second step there. I had my max salary, leaving, you know, making sure at least 700 was left on the table. And then I made a player pool of all the guys going off in just the very first tee times before the wind popped up. So we're going to be looking for an edge like that with the weather this week. A lot of the times when we're going to do that, it's going to be very late the night before. So because, you know, with weather, we want the very last report that we can get. And, you know, that's going to give us a much better idea. But I really think targeting, you can get a nice edge targeting some of those contests, the 150 max contests and Showdown, by using the Sabersim optimizer, creating a player pool where you're focused on, you know, a certain side of the wave when these guys go off.
Yeah, absolutely.
No, this is cool. What else do we got? Do we want to tackle? I'm not seeing any questions in the chat, but you know, is there anything else that you want to tackle as far as PGA is concerned?
I think one thing that, you know, it's just always worth showing off here whenever I'm on stream, not so much specifically PGA focused, but that's our entry editor. You know, we've got our set of lineups. We've kind of went back and forth. We've done a couple builds. Maybe we've got a set of lineups that we're happy with, we want to take into our contest. How do we get these out of Sabersim and into contests?
Yes.
We've made that super easy. We've streamlined the process so you don't have to fiddle with CSVs or manually keying in these lineups at all. If you go to the entries tab, you'll get this page here. Makes it super easy. You click this download template file link and it'll just auto start downloading your entries file. I think I've got a couple entries here registered for tomorrow already. You can just drag this in, and we'll just automatically pull up your entries information. So I'll do kind of a quick demo here. I've got my little low stakes suite of contests that I'm entered here for tomorrow. On the left-hand side, you've got your exposures, which will summarize your total exposures across all your lineups. On the right-hand side, you've got a list of all the contests that you're entered into. And we make this super easy. You can just go ahead and here, click fill contest with lineups. Tell us what build that you want to use for those set of lineups. So in this case, we'll use the 20 we just built. And then we've got these different fill methods here. These can seem a little confusing at first glance. We do have a little tooltip here that explains these in a little more detail, but I'll kind of just quickly explain a couple of these. The rank, what this is going to do is it's basically just going to take this 20 lineup build, and it's just going to fill in all of these lineups into the contest, right? The number one lineup in that order is going to go into every single contest. The top 3 are going to go into both my 3 maxes. Overall, the same 20 are going to go into all 3 20 maxes. The unique rank and unique random are instead going to put a unique lineup into every single contest. So we don't have a 68 lineup build here, but if we did, we could click unique random, throw a random lineup into every contest. I highly recommend that one if you're just getting started out and kind of just want to put a fresh lineup into every single contest. This is actually a new feature for those of you that have used the entry editor before. We now have this unique rank fill. So if you want to use this, you can actually rank your contests here and drag and drop these in a different order and say, I want to fill them in a particular order here, maybe to get your best lineups in the biggest contests, for example. And then you can use the unique rank fill, and it'll fill a unique lineup into every contest in the order that you entered them in here. But once we're ready, right, we've got some lineups in here. All you need to do is click the download and download and open DraftKings, and it'll download the file for you, take you right to the right page on DK or FanDuel or Yahoo or wherever you're playing, and you're ready to upload. So a really cool way of just getting your lineups out of Sabersim into the sites without having to worry about CSVs or making a mistake or doing anything like that.
Yeah, that's so convenient and so nice. I'm doing that all the time with NBA because you need speed with NBA. PGA, I've maybe done it a little bit more old school. I am getting older, almost in that boomer category. But no, I like how easy that you all make it for sure.
Yeah, and obviously not so much the late swap thing here. Like I know a lot of people use the entry editor on NBA just because that's where the late swap lives, and that's such an important part of the process. But I know on golf, especially a lot of people really have a specific lineup they want to see end up in all the right contests. It's very easy to mess that up with the CSVs, right? Especially you're doing this before you go to bed to get your lineups in before the following morning. You're getting a little tired. It's easy to just, miss a line and then all your contests are in the wrong, all your lineups in the wrong contests. This really smooths that out and makes it a lot easier than doing it the manual way. So I'd recommend checking it out if you haven't tried it.
Oh, I like it. Yeah, I'm gonna check that out here when I finalize my PGA stuff.
Cool.
I'm looking real quick to see if we got any questions. I don't think we do. But when it comes to PGA strategy, I think, I think what I would do, or I guess exactly what it is that I do is I go in and I much like NBA, but a little bit different. I'm making those manual adjustments. Like I've done my research and now I dive in to into the shop, if we want to call it that. And this is where I fine tune things, and I let the optimizer do its job. So I've had a ton of success with that. I had a nice hit the other week. I used Saber to help. It was just a single entry, but I still used it to help, define where I went with that build. So it's kind of nice. You got that? Can you show that screen? So what I did is I ran 10 builds. So I went through my whole process and I ran 10 builds, but I was just trying to identify my single entry build, and I pulled it up somehow to where I could see multiple builds at the same time. Does that sound familiar?
The only way I think you might have done that, maybe if you had two different tabs open.
It could have been like that too.
Side by side looking, two different tabs
on one of my screens. Yeah, I could have been doing that as well, going through. I mean, either way. The other thing I do sometimes is I'll put them into an Excel spreadsheet and no, like that. Yeah, like that. Yeah. That's how I had it, and I went through there and I just looked at each one and I just tried to identify different 2v2s I like, 1v1s I like. And so that's where more of like the hand picking nature came. It's just, instead of hand building it and then trying to hand build a bunch of different ones, this allowed me to do that at a much faster rate. So it was awesome.
Yeah, no. And another thing you can do here too, especially for folks out there that maybe are just playing a couple lineups, or if you're, maybe a single entry guy or a 3 lineup guy and you're used to hand building, one thing you can do that's kind of cool that I like to do is I'll collapse this whole exposures thing completely. Like, let's say we just want 3 lineups, right? We don't need to dial in our exposures and worry about exposures too much for just 3. You can collapse this over here completely and then just go look into your pool and study lineups this way instead. We'll give this a second to load here. Okay, here we go. And study your lineups this way instead. And every time you see a lineup that you think, oh, that looks kind of good, I'm interested in playing that for one reason or another, check it in and it'll go into your pool of lineups, right? So you can kind of go through this way and say, this is an interesting build. These are interesting builds, especially if you've already got all of your rules set up. Like in this case, we know that we're going to see a lot of the same names in all of these: Kokrak, Berger, Hideki, Morikawa, all the guys that we put up in our cores that we made for our groups. Makes it pretty easy to kind of fine tune here and say, maybe I'm interested in this one. Maybe I'm interested in this one. And then you can kind of end up at a nice little tight pool of lineups that way too.
Yeah, this is exactly what I was talking about, the pool setting. So no, that's a sweet feature, and one that I use, either doing single entry or 3-max. So I usually try to get, so like I build a couple different main teams, and I like to put them into the single entry contest that I can find. And then I'm always at each week. I love that my goal is to win that $5 50K. I've been close, haven't done it yet, but if you're, if you're getting into PGA, I would definitely recommend doing that $5 over the 15 or even over the $25 that's going this week, Millie Maker to first. You can run through a lot of money if you don't have the appropriate bankroll trying to do that. I'm not even upgraded myself to the $15 one yet. So people call me, I'm tight with my bankroll management, but that's just my style. And even after that hit, I'm still grinding that $5 because it's $750. Most weeks I'm not getting crushed. I'm usually returning something. And I've now, I think, been live, 3 or 4 times in it. So once I get that hit, I might move up to that 15. But right now I like it. I mean, it's, feeling no pressure each and every week. And then I'm really liking it using Sabersim's tool. So I'm going to use some of these tips that you've gone over now to tackle this week's $5 over on DraftKings.
Yeah, there you go. No, you don't have to tell me. I'm a bit of a nit myself with the bankroll management too.
Yeah,
so,
that's a good thing. It's a long-term game. You want to, it's all about staying in the battle. The longer you can stay in, the more chances that you're going to give yourself to win. So that's how I see it. Let me just browse one more time. I don't think we got any questions. So Jordan, is there anything else you want to tackle, or, should we move on with our day?
I think that's about all I wanted to walk through. Again, I mean, the big key points here, I think that under the hood, it's always important to remember that we're building these lineups with simulations, and in a sport like golf, where the average projection just really doesn't mean that much, that is just so important. From there, though, take advantage of the new powerful groups tools and the ability to edit your exposures, or to go in and fine tune your pool here in step 3. And I think you're in a good position to crush. So
I agree quite a bit. And, for members, we have our Wednesday night show with Big T, Uncle T, and Tambo tonight, potentially a special guest. Have that show up, have the optimizer up, fine tune your projections, fine tune your player pool. The cash chart is up, the playbook's up. I'll have my player pool in probably, for sure after NBA lock. We got 12 NBA games tonight. So, my core, I said, would be out by 8 to 9 Eastern. So the reason for that is because we have weather this week. And, so if you're out there like, oh, get the cores out earlier. Well, look, we're trying to give the best possible plays that we can. And in golf, when there's weather, there is an edge usually. And so that's why the cores aren't up yet this week. Not always going to be the case each and every week, but weather becomes one of the biggest edges in PGA and MLB, which hopefully they get the season, get a deal going. I think one's gonna happen. I mean, I haven't been following it that close, but DC has. He's our main MLB guy, and he's confident the deal will get done. So awesome. I'm excited to transition this show into MLB, because with MLB, I think it's one of those where it's just like, high variance, and you really want to embrace variance. Like, I'm never playing like a high owned bat, trying to a home run hunt. So it's going to be a ton of fun. Yeah, with that, we have our show coming up tonight. We have the Hardwood live coming up here at 3:45 Eastern. Then we have the Up to Lock show, and then we have our Wednesday PGA show tonight. So make sure to tune into all of those. All of the content will be out. And yeah, let's run Pier. So with me, AP, Jordan, let's all get after it.
All right.